Decided to give the overview of our agency and a little bit about what our special education division does. I also left some time at the end to be able to answer questions about our programs or talk a little more about how we can work together if you're needing it and things like that. So with that in mind, I'll hit the ground running and start with Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission overview. So that is the name for an umbrella for a state agency. And under that umbrella, we have three divisions. The first division is the one that you've probably all heard of, or most likely heard of, and it's our Office of State Guardian. So when an individual with a disability doesn't have someone to be their guardian, the state or the court appoints one to the state. And so that department, that division handles all of those cases. So they have full caseloads of individuals that they're the guardian of last resort for. The second division is the legal advocacy services. So we provide legal services to individuals with disabilities. Most common cases for our LAS division are mental health commitments. So individuals that find themselves in the position to be kept involuntarily at a facility have the right to representation at those hearings. And so we represent those individuals. They also do a lot of legislative work. And so I'll talk a little bit about that because we have a school-based one that we have proposed. And so I want to make sure you guys kind of get a little more information on what that is as well. Then we also have our human rights division. So our HRA division does disability rights investigations. And we look at any case where there is an individual with a disability, provider of disability services, and a potential rights violation. And those are looked at by a board of individuals from the community and investigated that way. So we look at things like obviously schools, but nursing homes, hospitals, anybody who really provides a disability related service. And we look at things outside of abuse and neglect. So there are law violations that aren't looked at by your Office of State or OIG. There are investigations that need to happen outside of those things. And we're not an enforcement body when we're looking at our human rights division. We are there to look at things, work together, try to make procedural and systemic changes within those facilities so that things don't happen again. And so with that in mind, that's where I started. I worked for the Human Rights Authority many years ago, and we were seeing an increase in cases for schools. And the process for the Human Rights Authority investigations is intentionally long. So we get those cases into Human Rights Authority and we look at them and we really dig into that and take our time to look at the case and try to do that systemic change. Some of those cases are open anywhere from 6 months to 18 months in order for the process to work itself out and to make those change in the components. And so that is not fast in the life of a child. And so the LAS department, the Legal Advocacy Services, sorry, alphabet soup. So the Legal Advocacy Services Department and the Human Rights Authority combined together and decided to do a collaboration to offer services. Oh, that says the audio stopped.
I'm hearing you just fine, so I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll keep going then. So we wanted to create a way that we could help families address special education needs on an individual basis and not on such a systemic basis that we have been looking at with the HRA and with LAS. And so from that, the special education department was born. And it has grown exponentially, as most of you on this call know. There is a very high need for individuals to help parents navigate this system. So what we did with our collaboration is we decided to divide things into 3 categories. So I provided Abby with 2 handouts. One of them kind of goes over the IGAC services as a whole. And then the other one breaks down that special education division. So if any of you need that, she will have that for you. But Basically what we have is in those three areas is the first one is information and training. And that is a good portion of what I do. We started off with me as the only advocate, and a lot of it was information and training. People calling, getting answers to questions. And then once they had those answers and could confidently go to their meetings, they could advocate on their own. Parents were able to say, listen, we know that this is what's supposed to happen. We went to a training about special education. We talked to someone about this circumstance, and here's the law that supports that this needs to happen. And all of that falls under information and training. And again, we do a lot of it. I can answer questions via email. I can schedule calls with people to go over their individual circumstances. We also offer a 4-hour special education overview training. Originally, that was a live training, and we were offering it regularly. And it got to the point where we noted that most of our participants were parents and have busy schedules and chaotic lives. And therefore, we were able to record and put that training up on our website. So if you go to the Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission site, there is a tab for the Special Education Division that includes a training that you can take anytime you want. It's divided into 4 sections, everything from the overview and history of special education, which I think a lot of people think is not necessary to know in the heat of the moment, but understanding where those laws came from and that they derive from pretty new disability laws when we're thinking about the history of our country and disability rights and things like that. We have special education, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is fairly new, and our attorney does a really good job on that training explaining how we got there. The other 3 sections are eligibility and evaluations is one of them, understanding the IEP is one of them. And then the last one is a brief one about ways to advocate and how to provide good advocacy. Those are all available at any time. Additionally, I do a lot of, I call them rapid fire trainings. As we have grown and things have developed, we noted that there were a lot of providers in the area that weren't necessarily school providers. So occupational therapy agencies or speech pathologists, people who are connected to schools who didn't necessarily need a full comprehensive understanding of special education, but they have special education questions. So we started offering trainings where people can schedule time with me and their agency, and we kind of hash out some of the problems that they're experiencing, ways that they can respond to school districts, ways they can support parents. And so I wish I had some fun, catchy, wonderful thing to call those, but rapid fire question sessions, Q&As. If anyone can think of something, they email me because I've been trying to find a fancy way to say that for a long time now. But basically that's what it is. And that falls under that information and training, that first area. The second area that we offer services in is formal advocacy. And we know that giving parents information is the first step, helping parents understand what's going on and what's supposed to be happening is really important. But we also know that, and I can tell you this as a parent of a child with an IEP, that it's hard to go in there alone. It's hard to prepare for all of the unknowns. It's hard to be emotionally invested in those meetings and reading those mountains of documents and not understanding what they mean and what they are supposed to say versus what they do say, and going into meetings and not getting the things that they think that they're going to need. And it's very challenging to navigate law and procedure and emotions when it's your own kiddo. So we developed our formal advocacy program or section of this with a support system in mind. We do not go in and represent parents in the same way that an attorney would do. There are advocates in Illinois who will do that, and that's fine and wonderful. And sometimes that's a better fit for families. But we are there to help a parent maintain the power that they need to have in that meeting as a key member of that IEP team. So we offer to help prepare for those meetings by reviewing IEPs. That looks different for every single parent. Some parents come in with a general understanding of an IEP and what's supposed to be in there and what it looks like and what it means, and they just want to answer questions. Some parents, I can schedule an hour with them and we are going to go through, section by section of the IEP so they understand what's supposed to be there versus what might be there, talking about what's worth the battle and what's not in those meetings, and just helping them to have the confidence that they can go into an IEP meeting with the knowledge of what's going to happen in that meeting, what should happen, what the law says, and helping them the best way possible. For some parents, that also means going to the meetings with them. Again, we're a support system, so I go to a lot of meetings where I say very little. I am there if a parent needs me. I tell my parents to tag me in, and that's what I want for them. I want them to be able to ask the questions because we've prepared, and to know what's supposed to happen if they do ask a question about a certain thing, so that they're ready to lead that meeting and be that key member. But I also know that sometimes schools shut us down. And again, we're emotionally invested as parents. So we want to make sure with that in mind too, that a parent can say, hey, Laura, what do you think about that? Or does that sound right to you? Or I had last week a parent say, I'm done. I just find this battle to be exhausting. And Laura, can you ask the questions going forward? And that's fine. That's what I'm there for. That's what a support system means. And as long as we're not taking away the parents' part of the role in the IEP meeting, that's what we want them to have. Then after the meetings, we might immediately decompress. We might immediately go over what happened and what the next steps are. We might wait until we get a final copy of the IEP and make sure that it says all the things that we thought it was going to say, and kind of walking through what those next steps are. So Advocacy Division is going to handle anything where we think we might be beneficial as a support network. There are going to be times when we get to procedural safeguards and a parent needs to or wants to pursue mediation or due process. And when we get to that part of it, we know statistically that I wish I had the current numbers, but it's ridiculous. It's like over 70%. A parent is over 70% more likely to be successful in mediation and due process if they have an attorney. And so with that, one of the pieces when we collaborated was making sure that we had a paralegal and an attorney on board with us, so that when it came time to do those things, even though the law allows a parent to represent themselves, we know that having an attorney is going to be more helpful, and we want to make sure that we can help with as many of those cases as possible as well. We only handle a mediation and due process. A lot of that has to do with staffing, so we're not equipped in the laws particular to things like discipline issues, unless they're disability related, and at that point we may have some advice. But for the most part, it's that mediation due process. It's things revolving special education law, special education violations, and helping parents navigate their procedural safeguards. So those are the three areas that we classify things into. Everything we do has to stem from something with IDEA or special education law in general. So for the most part, we use the Illinois, good grief, the Individuals with Disability Education Act. That's the IDEA federal law. We also look at Illinois laws for special education, so your administrative code, your school code, things like that. And when someone calls us, that's the first place we go. We are not going to be the expert in that child. There doesn't need to be another expert in the child. The parent is the expert in that child. The school district is going to know more about that child by default, the amount of time they spend with that student every day, the services that student receives at home and at school. And there's just a lot of people in those meetings who really know that kiddo well. So I just make sure parents understand that when we're going in there, I know the law. I'm not an attorney, I can't give legal advice, but I'm well versed in the policies and procedures of what's supposed to happen in those meetings. And so that becomes my area of expertise going in there, is those laws and how we're using them. After that, we take any kind of case we can. So we have to put it under special education law category of some kind, because that's the governing act that our agency uses. But we have taken cases for all kinds of things. We've seen a lot of cases for kids not getting EpiPens. We took a case last week about a student who has a feeding tube and the school is refusing to allow an oral snack during the day. And so we're helping them navigate that and what that might look like in their IEP. We do look at behavioral issues. The law in special education is very clear about what is supposed to happen when a student receives discipline. We allow school districts the ability to create their own discipline policies and procedures, and it doesn't, those policies and procedures include students with disabilities, but we see a lot of cases where students with disabilities are being disciplined for behaviors that are in relation to their disabilities, things they may not have control over, or things that they may be able to get services to help control or help modify that behavior. And they're not getting those appropriately because we're looking at that student through an inappropriate lens. So there could be discipline cases. There could be, just IEP services. We get a lot of placement change stuff, parents who call and the students or the IEP team decided the student needs to receive their services or their minutes someplace else, or they are increasing or decreasing those services. And so we will look at that data and help the parents to understand how we got where we are and then what the next steps might be. But again, a parent maintains that control through no matter what type of support you're getting from our program, it's parent driven. So I'm going to tell a parent that they have the right to a state complaint and they could file mediation, or they could, stay put in place. Like, those are their options, but ultimately they make those decisions and I help support whatever that decision is. So I feel like we've had a lot of success doing that. It helps parents to know what their rights are. And then when I'm not involved anymore, they are able to kind of, navigate more of it on their own. So we will help them with that one issue. And then, we might not hear from them for a while. And then maybe new issues comes up or something that they're like, I remember this is how we were managing this, but it's not working anymore. So what do we need to do to change this? And so, we've been able to get some families and things very quickly, and some of them we've been in it for the long haul. But I'm very proud of the program and where things are going in that capacity. The last thing that we do, and I'm going to get to tell you this with a whole lot of excitement in where we're at with this. So we also, as part of our governing act under the Guardianship and Advocacy Commission, we get to look at legislation. So if we identify an issue through any of our divisions that could be assisted or helped or made better or corrected through legislation, we can propose some changes. And for the last 2 years, we've been looking at the School Records Act. And what that says is that a student's record after they leave school, there is both a temporary and a permanent record. And permanent records are kept for 60 years. A permanent record is nowhere near what I believed it to be. I laugh all the time with parents when we talk about permanent records because I feel like that was a measure to keep us in line when I was younger. They're like, can't get that discipline because it will be in your permanent record. And now that I see permanent records, they're maybe a page and a half long with a transcript attached. It might be 3 or 4, but it's not a lot. Temporary records are only kept for 5 years, and those include all the students' special education records. And because we have looked at the Office of State Guardian and Legal Advocacy Services and Human Rights Authority all together with our division, we noted that there are individuals who cannot get services later in life because they do not have the documentation that the Department of Human Services needs in order to support that they had a disability before the age of 22. And all of that would be resolved if individuals were able to go back to their school district where they attended school and be able to maintain, like, get that information from their permanent record, and it will have not been destroyed. The average age of an individual coming into the Office of State Guardian is between 45 and 65. And when we're looking at that, those people may not have their parents around in order to maintain those records anymore. They might have been lost through moves. My school records are probably somewhere and they're in paper, not in electronic form. And so with all those things in mind, we want to make sure that these students' records are maintained so that when we proceed on to, later in life where they may need to have those documentation pieces, that they are able to get those. So we proposed some legislation. We've worked with DHS and with ISB, and going into this legislative session this year, we have it's SB 3166. So we have the legislation proposed, and we're hopeful that we're able to push some of that through in hopes that the students are able to have access to their records when they need them later in life. So that's all the things I do. I talked very quickly. I intentionally kept it somewhat brief because I'm hoping you guys have some questions or want to know a little more about things that we can handle or ways that I can help all of you.
Well, that's very exciting news about student records. So, yeah, I'm so excited. So, as a parent who's navigating adult services, I've been informed of my rights and know to ask for the copy, the latest copy of the IEP at your summary performance meeting. But I didn't know that till I started working here. And I can't imagine how many students have fallen through the cracks. And we work with families that has happened with. So, Carrie did develop a training for us over the summer called No Students Records Left Behind, in which we inform parents of their right to request those records at your summary performance meeting. But like you said, that 5 years goes by quickly. During that 5 years, there's a good chance you've not been pulled for pun services. Like there's all the things that comes into effect there that you need. So that is a very, very exciting development that's happening. I'm very excited about that.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed,
Yes,
fingers crossed. And it just kind of makes sense. I mean, we live in an age of technology where we can save things differently than we could 10 or 20 years ago. The cost of maintaining server space versus entire barns buildings for student records, like it's the time. We're there. We should be able to do this without a lot of impact to anyone fiscally and time wise. And so it seems right, and we have got a lot of support, so it's been very exciting. I'm a little bit of a dork about it.
I started I'm 40. So 3 years ago when I started my bachelor's degree, I applied to student services at my university because I had a 504 plan in school, needing some accommodations. And of course they needed a copy of. I, like everybody else, thought the school kept my permanent record forever. And I went requested it. And it was literally a very tiny little printout piece of paper that said the graduation requirements that I had met, a few like report card notes from like junior high that says like talks too much, but other than that, that's all it was. So that was kind of like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? So it happens for sure.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Hopefully
Yeah,
we'll get it figured out.
we got it figured out. We did. We got it figured out. So we do have one question in the chat so far, and they're wanting to know what the commission's capacity is to assist parents. So, what is the, and sorry, and it moved. Is there a long waiting list for someone to work with them, basically?
So the Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission as a whole, the mandate says that we provide services to individuals with disabilities. And so depending on which division you're looking at, then would matter how much you can be assisted. So we would need to hear more about your situation and get you to your individual division. But like, I love this agency. The size of this agency is small enough that we are able to collaborate between our divisions. We are run by a board of commissioners that are fantastic and help make sure that some of those things get processed quickly. As far as special education services are currently at the moment, we do not have a wait list. We try to serve every family that comes to us that needs assistance. With that, we have been able to expand. So we started with just me many years ago now, and now there are three of us. Because each case is not typical, there's no typical caseload for us. There's no typical, somebody's going to call me and just need a law, and I'm going to give them that law, and then that's all they're going to need. Other people are going to call and want more formal advocacy or legal services. We try not to turn anyone away. The way we are managing that is that we do not attend any meetings in person. All of the meetings that we attend with families are virtual. We do have a pool of volunteers. So each of our HRAs is run by a board that's local also. So let's say you were living in the Peoria region. The Human Rights Authority has a board of individuals that live in the Peoria region that handle those disability investigations. And each region has identified people who are familiar with special education who could volunteer their time and come to a meeting if someone really needed someone or wanted someone in person with them as a support system. But for the most part, we have had a lot of, well, not even for most, we have had a lot of success attending meetings virtually. I can be at a meeting in Chicago at 9 a.m. and training you guys across the state at 12, and I will be on an IEP here shortly that is down close to St. Louis. And so that's how we're able to manage the caseloads that we have right now. So there's no wait list. We are doing our best to make sure that everybody gets served in the way that's best for them. And that's how we're able to do that. So the whole state is covered by an advocate. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And we do something very similar here with Family Matters. So we are one of the state's two parent training and information center. Parents 90% of the time call us, and the first thing they ask for is an advocate. And I always like to use the phrase advocate can be a verb, not just a noun. So I can help you advocate for yourself by explaining your rights, your responsibilities, give training, records reviews. And then if at that point and we are prepared for the meeting, they still feel like they need the support of a person, not in person, but a person, that's when we start reaching out to other agencies that may be able to provide advocacy support. So we'll most commonly look at your local Center for Independent Living if they have an advocate on staff. IGAC is always one of the top three options that we send. And then we have a list of volunteers, kind of like you do, that are chained through our program that can serve as advocates, several on this call right now. So I'm super proud of that. So several on here right now. So we do some of the similar things. I will say that when I don't want to say more some of the complex cases, but some of them that are complex, I don't know how else to put it, I will skip over a SIL and provide IGAC's information. So not that you're more equipped than a SIL by any means, but there's just some things where a Hart does perfectly, and that's how we're gonna send there. So
Thank you.
yes, yeah, we kind of operate in the same way. So our next question is, can you expand on more of the Commission's ability to investigate systematic and repeat issues with particular institutions?
Absolutely. So the Human Rights Authority is considered to be an investigative, investigative body, so not an enforcement body. Almost every institution, provider, whatever it is in Illinois is governed by some kind of enforcement body. But when they look at things, they have to only look at very specific issues and concerns. So, for example, if we were looking at a nursing home, we are looking at nursing home laws as broad as we can, where OIG and public health have to look a little bit narrower to things like abuse and neglect, um, whether or not some of their procedures were violated. And then they have enforcement ability. So they look at, they can fine them. They can, go in and lower the amount of people they're approved to have in their facility. But their scope of what they're looking at is much smaller, where we can do any individual with a disability, any provider, and a disability provider, and any law. So we do really look at some very serious issues in a lens that we want to make change in that. So the Human Rights Authority is going to go in and say, we see that you're having this issue, and then we looked at your policy and we think your policy doesn't align with the law. So let's work together and make sure that your policy aligns with the law, or that your staff is trained on this law, and really trying to make that change more permanent and more systemic. But we're not really limited at what we can look at, as long as it falls under a possible disability rights violation.
Wonderful. Okay. Is there, this is always a big question for us. It's one that I have personally contacted you about as well. So, the best place to provide a breakdown of the procedures for obtaining guardianship or supportive decision making for your adult dependent.
Absolutely. So our website is where I send everyone first. So the IGAC website has a breakdown of all the way from like what is guardianship to how to obtain guardianship. I was talking earlier about supported decision, or about legislation we proposed in our agency, spearheaded that supported decision making law. So we provide all the trainings and information on that as well. It's all in there. If you can't find what you need on there, and thankfully, bless our IT department, because they have made it much easier. A year ago, I was nervous to send people because it was kind of like jumping down a rabbit hole. They have gotten on and streamlined a lot of that, as supported decision making is its own tab, so you can find it all in one spot now, and that's wonderful. But so if you dig through that stuff there and you can't find what you're looking for, or you need individual help, our intake line, so the number that's on both my flyer and the Guardianship and Advocacy website, and the full flyer, will send you to an intake line, and they'll get you to someone who's available at that time to answer specific guardianship questions. We do not assist with helping people get guardianship, but we can educate people. We can tell them what the process is and point them in the right direction, and answer a lot of questions on that, just really at our basic intake level. And then if you need more than what intake can provide, they're pretty good about getting you where you need to be. Again, benefits of being a smaller agency.
And we get a lot of questions of, can you provide me with information for an attorney to handle guardianship for my adult dependent? We try to keep a running list of attorneys that we may have contact information for, but we in no way can say, well, this is the best attorney there, or that is the best attorney there. It just like any other part of your student's disability, it's individualized based on the needs of your student, based on the needs of your family. So, which leads into our next question about supports for placement decisions with children with behaviorals in the classroom, and being placed outside the general education environment. So I would think, again, that would be very individualized per the student's needs, not per their diagnoses or eligibility of an IEP, but absolutely they could contact your office with questions about a placement disagreement, correct?
Correct. And there's a lot of like ins and outs of placement decision making, like things that I think, are hard to navigate when you're the parent, because you have all the again, emotional investment in it, but really they have to have data. And if they have a school district collects the right data, and they have tried the right things, and they've done all the process they need to get to a placement change, then even then there's laws they have to follow before changing a placement, after changing a placement. It's very complicated. So we definitely support a lot of parents through placement change. We do not recommend placements, because first of all, I'm located in one little tiny area of the state, and so I don't even know all the placement options. But I really want a school district and a family to look at what's best for that kiddo. And sometimes, it's not as cookie cutter to say that if you have this kind of what Abby is saying, we can't really look and say, oh, well, you have autism and you live in this area, and so this is the best school. It doesn't, even if I wanted to, it doesn't really work like that. But we certainly can help with that policy and procedure part of that, help them navigate and know what's supposed to happen, what they can ask for. Parents call me all the time and say, well, is there anything I can't ask for? No, ask for the moon. And if they say no, put in writing. Like, I should have put it in writing, like
Yeah.
tattooed somewhere. So there's some really clear guidelines on how to manage that and how to get the best result from that. But there's not ever an easy placement answer,
Yes, I agree
unfortunately.
completely. very individualized per your student for sure. Our next question is, do you provide services to any suburb? I think they were asking your services are statewide, correct?
Yep. Yep. We have our northern region. Well, we have 3 advocates. We cover the whole state. We do try to keep, if we can, and caseload numbers allow for it, we try to keep. We have Mary Flores is located up in Chicago. She is a Spanish speaking advocate. She is phenomenal. And so she's up in that region. We cover all of that. We have Leslie Howard covers the central region, and then I cover mostly the southern region. So we've got everybody covered. Having said that, sometimes people will call and they call on the right day of the week, and I'm the one available, so they get stuck with me. Sometimes, things happen. So that's what we try for, is to do things regionally. But at this point, with there being 3 of us and a giant state of Illinois, we just kind of manage it how it comes in. But we don't turn anyone away by area.
Well, that wraps up our questions in the chat, except that I have one more. We're starting podcasts with Family Matters very soon,
Awesome.
and one of our closing questions is always going to be, for a parent who just received the information their child may need an IEP, what is your first piece of advice to do?
Take a training. It could be ours, it can be somebody else's, but the nuts and bolts of what eligibility and evaluation looks like, the nuts and bolts of, what goes into an IEP, knowing those basic things helps everyone. There's so much to know. You don't have to know all of it, but you do need to know the general overview of what's supposed to happen so that you know what you can ask for, you know how to proceed. But yeah, I'm like, we have this training, so if you're feeling lost, like, I'm here to answer your individual questions, but there's a lot to it, and the evaluation process in and of itself has a lot involved in that. And what we as parents sometimes think is common sense, like, of course they're going to do that, is not always how the law and the procedure are designed. So it helps to have some training and some background to understand what those expectations are going to be for the next few months when you get to that point.
Okay, well, at this point, I'm going to stop the recording, but we do have somebody with their hand up, so we'll address that as soon as I stop the recording.